It's yet another Blue Room show this week. We've done so many of them, given the massive news that arrived at Everton, and that is that we've got brand new owners. And I've got brand new guests because I've gone through every single one of our contributors, friends, and everybody else in and around the Blue Room. And it is two of my favourite. I'm not just saying that because they're sitting next to me, but you'll have noticed that I've said it to every single one that's been on our shows all week. It's Warren and Peter, yeah. And it's a Friday. It's nearly Christmas. Evan have got brand new owners. Has Santa come early for you, Pete?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Santa Claus, I call him. Santa Claus and freaking.
You've always got something like this cheese, haven't you? So go on, mate. What's your initial thoughts? I want you to sing away to what week you've had here with Everton.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously all knew it was coming. I don't think anyone had any real doubts about whether they passed the fit and proper owners test. I think that was not a formality by any stretch because it's Everton, but I still, I was supremely confident that there wouldn't be any issues with that, given their ownership of Roma and they actually have money, unlike 777. I think, to be honest, the biggest relief about the whole thing is just looking back at the last sort of 2 years plus and looking at how close we came to having, well, 777 were one, weren't they? But once that fell through, we were so close to going into the abyss to just not existing anymore. And that's no exaggeration. I genuinely believe that if we would have got relegated, for example, I think that our football club wouldn't exist right now. So it's such a massive relief. I'm hugely excited. It's the first time, not just since Moshiri, this is the first time in 25 years where we are having a truly fresh start. Because when Moshiri came in, obviously Bill Kenwright was still there. Moshiri was basically brought in to bankroll, what was already in place rather than to make fundamental change. This is the first time since Bill Kenwright took over from Peter Johnson that we've actually got a proper fresh start. I'm supremely confident in the freaking group's ability to identify and to put the right people in the positions of power at the football club. I'm confident that they'll be able to lead us going forward into our new stadium as well. I say I'm not going to get carried away. It's not like a case of when we brought Moshiri in and everyone was singing we're rich and we were all sort of thinking about going out and spending all kinds of money and buying our way into the top four. I don't think it's like that. I think the main thing for me is stability, and I think that's a word which I'm looking forward to be honest. I'd do anything for a really boring mid-tables finish next season, put it that way.
Yeah. What I'm with it, I've done a really good piece there with, if I do say so myself, with Patrick Ridge there, who went through more of the financial stuff in terms of what Everton are able to do, what they can't do, transfers, PSR, all that sort of stuff there, which sadly has been something else that's been right at the front and centre of Everton's issues, hasn't it, in recent years, in terms of being able to get players in and various financial issues we've had with point deductions and whatnot. Well worth your time if you're into that sort of thing. I know some are not and just want to see what's going on the pitch here. But Everton get new owners in. Feels like, yeah. I mean, this is the thing that Pete mentioned there. Every single thing he was saying, and I've done it myself here. And I think, am I making a mistake by saying I'm really optimistic about what's going on here, given what we've had happen in the past? And when this has taken us to a point where you've had to. Basically, we got lucky with 777, didn't we? Really, because Farhad Moshiri was willing to get rid of anyone who rocked up on the doorstep with a brief full of cash, and I'm not saying these are our white knights by any means of the term at the moment, because there are things that haven't gone well for them at Roma. I think we all need to have a look a little bit deeper at that, to be honest with you, to give a general assessment of what they're going to be like. But by and large, they've come in. They are now in a process of clearing the debts. Everton's still in a tricky situation when it comes to recruitment, particularly in January. I mean, I think you need to tick it off your list if you think that Everton are going to be going and spending a ridiculous amount of money. I'd even go as far as this summer, really, unless we sell to buy, i.e. Branthwaite comes to mind first of all. But what are your initial thoughts on it? Are you glad that this has happened and it's sort of, you're a little bit more relieved about this, or, is you still trying to keep in your mind that Everton have still got one hell of a job to do to ensure that they're still in the Premier League when we go to this new stadium next season?
Yeah, it's been great listening to, I'm my own bias, but it's been great listening to the shows this week. Yourself with Rob and Keith, and then Matt talking with Paddy about it all, and Paddy giving his journalistic aspects to it as well, and adding his opinions to it. And I've taken it all in. I've tried to listen to it all and really gauge exactly just how I feel about it all. And there's the relief, of course, there's the optimism, there's the reason to be excited, of course there is. And Rob put it very well. He said, this is a day or a week to get optimistic. If you can't get optimistic about this, then what is the point? So I absolutely do feel like it is, like Pete said, a clean slate. I absolutely do feel like it's a chance for the club to really now start again and move forward and really get things in place that a Premier League club in the 21st century should be doing. And if the club wants to act like one of the elite, it needs to behave like one of the elite. And fingers crossed these guys who have come in are going to be the start of that. But I think the overall emotion, and the overall feeling I did have was that relief. But I think we are just all a little bit scarred, aren't we, from the past? And I think we still realise what is still left to do. And I think there's been a huge difference in terms of the reaction from fans online and from what I've heard and what people have spoken to. There's been a massive difference between the news this week and when Moshiri first took over. We'd been desperate for a billionaire. We'd been told we needed that billionaire to finish the missing piece of the puzzle, to finance these players that we thought could add to what we had with that Moyes team / Martinez team. It didn't quite work out for us. It turned out to be a very chaotic 7-8 years. And we have been mired by that. And I think that's in the forefront of everyone's minds, that is still, it's very apparent what is on the pitch now and where the state of the club is now. That is the scarring of the last 7 or 8 years. So it was met this week, the news, with joy, with celebration, but quite timid as well. And I think that's been a good thing, actually. I think expectations have been tempered a little bit, but in a good way. I think no one's screaming about, we're going to do this, we're going to win that, we're going to spend a fortune. I think everyone's quite realistic in that we need to address the issues and the problems at the club. And we accept that it's going to take some time before those issues are fully resolved. And we know that the remit is going to be to get through this season. And I know a lot of people are getting wound up by that phrase, just get through this season. But I think from a financial standpoint and from a point of view where the club is at, from a commercial, playing, recruitment, academy, women's team, all of those things that make up Everton, we are not where we want to be to demand any more from just getting through this season. We've got a new stadium, as we know, on the horizon. And now with these new owners, there's a lot of scope for really bright hope and really, good optimism there. But I think the reaction I've certainly heard and seen this week has been one of, I'll use that phrase again, cautious optimism. I think a lot of us are very happy that the change has been made. It does feel like a weight off the shoulders that Moshiri and probably the last 40 years worth of those running Everton have finally gone. And it's now time for a new start. And I just hope we at least see shoots of something, green shoots of a rebuild that we can buy into and that we can see, and that an identity with Everton's created again. And I think we're just all fed up, aren't we, of news stories the last 5, 6, 7 years being negative. I'm ready for some more positive news now. I'm ready to hear about how the academy has done something that that has given them a boost. It might be a new build, and it might be a new strategy. I don't know, but it'd be nice to hear something along those lines coming out of the club. It sounds like that we're going to see more investments into the women's team, and we were just briefly talking about the game last week before we started recording, and I noticed there's been a signing already today. So I'd love to see the women's team getting more of an investment and not just left to the side and not just be left as an afterthought, but actually it's been positive to see that the owners have come out and said, with regards to the academy, in regards to the women's team, there is going to be investment made to improve all facets of that. And you've touched on it there, but recruitment for the first team, they've stated and they've made clear in their initial opening statement to the fans the importance of what goes on the pitch currently in the short term with the first team is of the utmost priority. I'm paraphrasing that, I'm putting words into them out there, but that's how it certainly reads. And I don't think massive swathes of money will be spent in January, but I certainly believe now with a bit more financial freedom that we've got with the clearing of a lot of debts that we've had, I think moves will be made in January to improve the squad. And I think discussions are probably well underway, or at least have been underway for the past couple of weeks, if not months. So I feel very pleased. I certainly feel the relief. I definitely feel in a more positive mood about the football club. But I'll use a word that the Friedkins themselves have used. Actions will definitely be speaking louder than words. And I think once we start seeing those actions put in place, I think that's when you'll start seeing, certainly from myself anyway, a lot more excitement and a lot more joy to be had from this takeover.
Do you know, it's really interesting, Pete, there, what I'm saying about them saying that basically, not verbatim, but talk is cheap. So often you don't hear that from that level of ownership in sport, not just football. It's normally the very easy things to write in a bit of a statement and things. And look, they do all that. Everybody does all that, don't they? They put on the bullet points of what we want to do, what things we're going to do, the intentions of what we have, and all that. Farhad Moshiri came in with a load of intentions here, but I don't want to focus this show with us three looking at, well, look what Moshiri did. Let's take it easy. Cautious optimism is something that I could probably get tattooed on my head, Warren, because I think I've said it that much since it's happened. But there's a different way that I've looked at this a number of occasions when I've been putting our shows together and sort of what sort of structure we're going to have here, what narrative we're going to go be talking about. Do you think you'd feel half as optimistic as we are now with new owners if Moshiri, you weren't desperate for him to leave? Because it's easy and you're absolutely well within your rights to do so. I've done it myself, got really, really enthusiastic about new owners coming in, think that it's the promised land and all that sort of thing. These are similar things that Moshiri said when he first came, when he was talking about Everton don't want to be the museum. They need to get through the door before it closes. All of those kind of phrases he was coming out with. The very chalk and cheese compared to what we're hearing from TFG since Dave came in. Are you more relieved to see Moshiri go, or more happier to see the new owners? Because I couldn't wait for that man to leave, given the predicament we were in. And now it remains to be seen what these owners do when we see them properly, dig into what we're going to need at the club and talk about January there, which if you do listen to that interview I've done with Patrick there, he talks about more what we're able to do in January and what we're not, and always a look ahead to the summer as well. So which category you're in there, which camp you're in there, Pete? Don't stay in the middle.
To be honest, I'm just relieved to see the back of him. I'm genuinely relieved to see the back of Moshiri, and I think that is a massive part of it, where I don't think the Freaking group necessarily have to do too much to improve on the reign of Farhad Moshiri. To give him his due, Moshiri has managed to get that stadium over the line. Whether he, obviously in the end he didn't necessarily use his money, but that stadium wouldn't be there without him. Like that. Let's be frank. So that's the one thing that I will give him a lot of praise for, and that'll be something that I think Evertonians can appreciate for generations, and it'll be down to Farhad Moshiri, to be honest, and Colin Chong, by the way, who has done an incredible job, whether being the stadium director or moving up onto the board. So I'm made up to see he's still going to be part of the club. But yeah, I do think that the turbulent time that we've had under Moshiri, the false dawn, if you like, was it was probably as extreme as it gets. I don't think any other football club would have invested so much money so poorly with an owner who just never get anything right. I think that my biggest relief is that we now have people who are competent. And I think competency is something which we've lacked for so long in so many facets of that football club in so many areas. People who are actually not just experienced, but people who will actually have a clear vision, and people who will actually be employed to carry out that role rather than other people interfering. I get the impression from the Freakin group that they are very sort of, say, hands off. I don't think they get involved too much in terms of, they don't necessarily go to every game. They don't speak all the time in the press. They don't make empty promises. That was another problem when Textor came out, the Palace owner, when he was supposedly on the verge of agreeing a deal and was looking to sell his shares in Palace. My initial reaction to him was, he's speaking too much, he's talking too much, he's trying to butter us up too much. And like Warren, said before, in terms of what the Freakins have said, it's a breath of fresh air for me to say, that they're acknowledging that actions speak louder than words. I think we had far too many words from Farah Moshiri at the start. I think when he couldn't live up to those words, he shied away and he went into hiding. So when things were going well, we've seen this a lot over with Everton Football Club over the years. When things are going well, certain people have always liked to speak out and take credit for things, but when things go badly, they seem to go into hiding. I get the impression that the Freakin group will be the exact opposite. I think that they're the type who will lead from the sidelines, and they will allow other people to take on their roles and will oversee it diligently. But I say that the main positive for me is to see the back of this circus that's been in town for the past 7 years.
I was on BBC Radio Merseyside talking about this one, and I said similar to what Pete did there. There's one sort of decent thing that was left as Moshiri's legacy, and that was the new stadium. There are still issues about that. There are still financial things going on with that. There's still financial things. I know immediately people are saying, well, Everton's got a clean slate, all of the debts written off and things like that. There's still finer moments with that as well. You don't need to look too deep to see that there are certain things that are out of TFG's control immediately to come in and simply say, there's a blank check. You go and get rid of everything there. In terms of the reputation they come in with, the money's no object. Everton are finally arriving at a table that's been long held by so many other clubs in the Premier League. In fact, Patrick put to me that Everton are the last of the big clubs that didn't get to that extent in regards to finances and ownership. And it's always felt to me like we've missed out so many times over the years, missed out on getting a stadium years ago a few times, as is a bit notorious, isn't it, when you think back on that? Missed out on when it became the Premier League in terms of investment with that, and you look at everything that's above that. I think what you see now is a bit of Everton have always had to try and play catch up to this here. With these guys coming in, it certainly looks to me like a step forward, a step in the right direction. And we're saying this a couple of days after they were confirmed. Yeah, well, yesterday they were confirmed as the new owners. What they do over at Roma is a little bit different, and I'm not researched this too deeply here, but plenty who are sort of and ahhing about them. I wouldn't go as far as saying they're overly negative and you're going to have mobs outside the offices and things like that. But they've sacked managers quite a lot. In fact, the thing that I did look at was they've sacked the exact same managers Everton have. The same amount of managers Everton have since 2013 when we lost David Moyes, when we gave David Moyes away, which is 10. And Everton's is, well, it's 8 to go off on a bit of a tangent there. It includes Unsworth and Ferguson, who are caretaking managers, of course. Very similar in our way, really, with getting rid of managers and, hiding and sacking them and things like that. What concerns you have from them, from what you've seen, what you've read? Because it's very easy at this particular time for us all to go, and again, the asterisks I put next to anything that sort of regards as a question of them and putting them putting them into the stand, as it were. There are there's other things that you can't have ownership at a football club without them expressing any sort of a concern. and there have to be. There's no perfect ownership of a football club. It's impossible. It really is impossible. There are a few that I'd refer to who've done really good jobs there, but they've still been at massive other ends of criticism from fans. What are your concerns over these? Do you have a concern over them?
I think there's going to be, I think whoever came in, regardless of who it was, I think there was always going to be a concern. And there is concerns with these, and I think you only have to look at Roma. I think there's certain circumstances that are different with Roma compared to us, and I think there's a lot more context needs to be given that maybe I'm not qualified or know enough about to be able to explain. But I know there is mitigating circumstances with Roma compared to Everton. So I think with any owner that comes in, there's always going to be a fear, if you like, or there's always going to be a question mark over them about, are they right? Are they going to do the correct business practices? But I think what I have heard of them, and Pete said it there really, is that I think where Moshiri was, I've heard Paddy use this analogy that when you play Football Manager or FIFA, Moshiri was doing that essentially with Everton. It was his money, he could do what he wants. I think these are probably going to be a little bit more business savvy. I think what I've read, if anyone gets the chance, I thought Phil McNulty's analysis of Moshiri's tenure at Everton was a really good read on the BBC website, BBC Sport website, when he stated that he was at Arsenal at that point before Everton, and he had a taste of what it was like to be a part of a club. And I think he came with a lot of naivety to Everton about what he thought it should be like, and he wanted to always make that statement transfer. He wanted to make that statement, have that statement manager, which he got in Ancelotti, and that probably set us backwards, really. Things like getting Ancelotti and trying to sign, Phil McNulty made the point about Gylfi Sigurdsson when we signed him. It was a statement signing because we broke the transfer record rather than actually what was beneficial to Everton. I think what these will do, and I think by the sounds of what we've heard and read, what they will do, because they've already been doing it, behind the scenes anyway in the last couple of weeks, is I think they will root and branch everything out of the club and find out what the club is about and what needs fixing. And I think they will hire people or employ people as part of their business network and as part of their strategy, if you like, or, how these business people work. They'll employ people to look after these things, and they'll be the top of the tree, of course, but they'll get fed back the information about what's working, what's not. And the people who will do that will be the likes of your director of football, will be your commercial manager, will be your executive chairman, what was announced yesterday, will be certain people in certain boardroom roles. So they've already started putting the pieces in place, which I've certainly appreciated. And it's nice to have new names and new faces, regardless of if they do well or not in the next however many years, and we all hope they do. It's nice that we're not tarred now with some of the names from the past. It really is a fresh start. So I think, yes, there is a concern, but I think what I have liked is they haven't come in really all singing and all dancing. I think they've come in quite efficient, actually. They know there's a job that needs doing. They've outlined what needs doing, and now it's time to get to work. That's certainly the impression I've got from them. I haven't had the impression of where the White Knights coming to save you, and I don't think they've oversold it too much as well on trying to how can I put it, try to sort of come out with sort of anything cringy or cheesy or soppy from to say towards the fans. When you think back, 777, when they made the statement before they'd even bought a club, they came out and made a statement and said how great Evertonians were and how they wanted to fulfill Everton to former glories. And I'm reading that and I'm thinking, I don't even know if you lot have got the money to be, and you're coming out and saying this. The difference in the statement here was very much I read it as this anyway, let's get down to business and let's get things going. So the approach has certainly been right. I don't think, though, Dave will be able to ascertain anything until they've had a period of time in charge. I think the short term is very important. I think what they do in January, if they do anything in January, is very important. I think what happens in the summer, we're going to say it again, we're going to be doing shows and we're going to use that phrase again. This is the biggest summer in years for Everton. I think what happens with regards to the director of football and the manager and what happens with their futures, whatever they go and whatever they decide from there, I think that will be key to the fans anyway, and give us an indication of what their plan is going forward. And I think that's what we want, really. I think that's what we want to see. We want to see that there's a plan, and we want to see the, not just on the pitch, but obviously offered as well. What I would love, I've heard a lot of people this week say I'd take sort of a mid-table season this season and next season, and just let's have a period of stability. And I absolutely would. Don't get me wrong. What I'd love the most from these lot is if I never have to hear from them. And what I mean by that is that they're doing all the work behind the scenes.
An excellent point,
what I appreciate, and we've done this to a degree in the last last year or two, is the odd statements, now and again, maybe at the end of the year or at this sort of time of year as well, when it's Christmas, just to, a sort of address to the fans. This is what we've been pleased with. This is what we've seen. The odd little comment here and there, because I think sometimes when owners are completely distant and don't say anything, I think that's when you get a little concern that are they really bothered about the club?
Mm-hmm.
But all these people they've appointed at boardroom level, commercially, financially, whatever it might be, I don't want to hear their names in any articles to do with Everton. I don't want to hear their names in any newspaper, online things that I read. I don't want to hear the names on any websites. I don't want us talking about them. My personal thing I'd love to do, because we talk a lot about doing this podcast, don't we? I'd love to just get talking about what's on the pitch again. I'm fed up of talking about PSR. I'm fed up of talking about money. I'm fed up of talking about A cap, knee cap, B cap, C cap, AMP, TNT, CAR. I'm at 777 234. I'm fed up of talking about VAR. VAR as well. I just want to talk about what's on the pitch. And I think the best thing they could give us, or one of the best things they could give us, would be that degree of calmness, and that we're so stable and that we're so getting on with things and getting back to making us where we all hope we should be, that we don't hear from them and we don't hear names. And I've forgotten the new chairman's name already. I hope it stays that way. I don't want to know his name. So that's my wish, for as well as having, obviously, seeing everything better from a recruitment point of view, seeing everything better from the academy. I mean, the academy certainly needs a lot of love and care and attention at the minute to start bringing through some players from that. And as I mentioned as well, the women's team and that side of it. So that's what we should be talking about on this podcast. And quite frankly, we haven't been able to do that these last few years because of all the other nonsense we've had to talk about. So here's hoping that that's what they offer at least. And I will be delighted with them if we can get to a position where that's what it's like in 12 months' time.
That's an excellent point, saying you never want to hear from them, you never want to know them and all that. So there used to be old school, that, didn't it? Do you know what I mean? When you'd never see any of that, you're just talking about what's on the pitch. And when you're signing a player, maybe you get a chairman come out and say, we're pleased to sign him, blah, blah, blah. And then that's it. They go back behind closed doors and everyone kicks on with what goes on the pitch. But such is life, the way football is these days. Look what's going on at United, look what's going on at City. It's the way it's done these days. I suppose they'd set the tone to everyone else if they were exactly like what you've said there, Warren. Interesting, perfect segue from what you said there in terms of on the pitch. Just referring to what Dave said in their statement when they came in. Dave said, in the short term, we understand that the club has faced significant challenges on and off the pitch for several years. That's why our immediate priority is stabilising the club and improving results on the pitch. Interesting way to say that. Interesting way to interpret that for many of us. Looking at that, I mean, if you didn't know Everton's current financial plight, let's say it's still that until all different things are confirmed. Yeah, I mean, that would say to me that, well, Everton clearly need a change on the pitch. And look, I'm not going as far as saying Sean Dyche needs to get sacked, because, well, I'm very one of them fans who thinks he needs to leave the club as soon as possible, really, for us to get in a much more comfortable position on the pitch towards the end of the season. That's just my opinion anyway. For them to come out and say that, I mean, I hope it's not naive enough to think that we can go and spend all sorts of money in January, because that's absolutely not the case. You're looking more at the odd few million, or not you're not looking at the extent of what you see. Typically, January in itself isn't a great time to go and sign players. Most clubs, most managers say we hate January because that's not when we want to do any business. Everton could certainly do with some business, but for them to come out and say that, immediate priority is stabilising the club and providing results, and improving results on the pitch. What's that mean to you? What do that wording? What does the way in which they phrase that? What does that mean to you, Pete?
Well, I think first of all, touching on Sean Dyche and Kevin Thelwell, I think they're going to be the first two who hold him into their offices to explain.
Well, apparently he had the meeting today, didn't he? Today, by the way,
Yeah.
This might be going out on Saturday, so today's obviously Tuesday. Today's obviously Friday. What we're talking about here.
But I think that meeting will be very important in terms of what they decide to do. Obviously, it's not going to be just based on that meeting, but I think that Sean Dyche and Kevin Thelwell have to put forward a plan of action, a vision of what they see, for us for the rest of the season. If they do have transfer targets that are realistic, I think that they have to, really push for those. I think one thing, the impression I get from TFG as well, I always got the impression with Farhad Moshiri that it didn't matter who was talking to him. He would go with his own instinct anyway, or he'd go with. I think he was easily swayed in so many ways, but he never seems to take the advice from the right people. So, for example, when we had Marcel Brands and there was talk of him being sidelined and players being signed behind his back, if you like, Moshiri was stepping in and signing players. Moshiri had agents who were pushing players upon him. We saw that with that El Ghazi loan that was just completely pointless, that no one wanted. I think that the Freaking Group will do the opposite. I think they're going to listen to the people who are in place at the club at the present time. I can't see a manager change. I'll be honest with you. I don't think they'll be in a rush to change the manager. I think that they'll be looking at it thinking if we need any kind of stability, I think it's in those roles until the summer. Unless things go really pear-shaped with 10 games to go. I think that's probably the only point when they will actually sort of pull the trigger. I think that I think that is the one level of stability they'll be looking forward to. I don't think that Sean Dyche will be given a new contract at the end of the season. I think that will be a case of shaking hands and parting ways. Hopefully, with us still being in the Premier League. But I think that the immediate priority, as you've touched on, we won't have massive money to spend in January, but certainly maybe we won't be searching in bargain basements anymore. In terms of upfront payments, obviously we still can't shell out too much, but in terms of spreading cost over the course of a contract, those options are there for us now because we do actually have the financial backing to be able to cover those. We have to do some wheeling and dealing to get the upfront payment down for PSR, but as I say, when we know that the revenue is going to naturally increase, instantly our revenue is or in terms of the outgoing payments, they've already dropped because if we've paid off the debts or we've managed to refinance the debts, the interest rate that we were paying was around £1 million a week just on the debts because of the high interest rates that were on those loans. So instantly that's £52 million a year better off just purely from interest. So in terms of our future revenues and our future earnings and our future potential for buying players, I think that's going to be exponentially larger come the summer. But as I say, just because the financial position hasn't necessarily advanced too much between now and January, because of the financial backing and because of the potential future earnings that are now apparent, I still think that gives us some wiggle room to be able to go out and actually buy some players, is what I'm getting at.
What's your take on that statement there that I've just read out?
Yeah, I think, well, just go out while Pete was talking there. I was just having a look at I don't know if you've seen it. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a 7-point vision the TFG have got for Everton, and right at the top of that is strengthening the men's first team. Repeat that again. Strengthening the men's first team squad. I think this is a key phrase here, through thoughtful and strategic investments. So, like Pete just said there, I think that it's not going to be a case of we're going to be splashing 26.5 million on Davy Klaassen and 45 million on Gylfi Sigurdsson in the same transfer window. I think them days, seemingly from what I'm reading from that, are gone. But I think what it will do, and Pete said it brilliantly there about the interest, and this is a lot more of the financial stuff that I don't really understand a lot of, but the fact that you're saving that much money surely frees up some spend. But I don't think we'll go into it with, right, who's a big name sign and we can get him right now. I think what they'll do is they'll address what the squad needs and they'll look at what's needed. And from a squad point of view, we've talked about this, but we definitely need probably a couple of fullbacks. We definitely need someone who's in the attacking third, a bit more direct with a bit more speed. We're quite a slow team. And I think that if we can get 3 players, maybe, I mean, look, this is all speculation. This isn't me with any knowledge or any idea of what the plans are or what's being talked behind closed doors. But if by the end of January, Dave, they turn around and they produced, or Everton signed, 3 players in key areas that we need, and maybe it wasn't for big money, or maybe it was, maybe it was 2 younger players with a more experienced player, or 2 experienced players to help us, get to the end of the season, maybe with a younger player coming in. I don't know. Whatever the strategy might be in terms of recruitment, they've certainly looked at it and they've certainly thought about it, because I don't think you get that statement from them on the very first line. And I just want to read one more thing, and this is going off on a slight tangent away from what you've just asked me, but I thought the second line in this was, I think this is, notice the word here as well, cultivating homegrown superstars through Everton's academy, not first team players, not players who we can maybe sell to, a championship club to make a bit of money. So we've got a bit of cash in the bank, to create superstars who are going to play for Everton and going to feature for Everton. Now, that's quite a big statement. That's quite a big claim that you want to do. But again, it's not really a claim, or not something that's been said along with all the statements they've made so far. It's not something that's, I wouldn't say, unrealistic. I think the academy is the place to start, and I think we are capable of doing that. We've done it in the past, but I think in the last 30 years, probably only, I mean, we've had players like Rodwell come through, and obviously Gordon as well, and players like that who've maybe not totally, in terms of Rodwell anyway, not totally fulfilled the potential. But the only real one I can think of who's really gone on and been a huge success in terms of product from our academy is Rooney. So I'd love to see, maybe not at his levels that he was at 16, because he was a once in a lifetime youth player, Rooney. But I'd love to see another 3 or 4 of them type of players come through and be, like it says there, superstars from the academy. So I think it's going to be a really interesting January. I expect people to come in. I expect transfers to be made. Now, how they come and what form they're in, I don't know. But I certainly don't expect, well, January's not a great time of year anyway, is it? But I don't expect 30, 40, 50, 60 million being spent. No. I think we'll look more down the lower end. We might even look across into Europe at some of these lesser leagues, if you like. And we might even look lower in, say, like the Championship and around that area and in the lower leagues.
Worked before.
I don't know. Yeah, but it will be very interesting to see. And like I said earlier, we've all got that, caution about what these guys and what this group's going to bring. But reading those first 3 bullet points, and I keep going back to them, and certainly the top one about strengthening the men's team, I think the wording on that's very, 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 it's a proactive wording to use, and certainly very encouraging. But as we've said already, actions will speak louder than words. So let's see come January what happens.
I've got a different view on both of you here, except what you both say. But it points in the direction that Sean Dyche is not going to be longed as Everton manager. When you refer to the academy there, he's been heavily critical of not even having a look at these lads. I think he's been over to Tranmere once to see the under-23s. The kid he put in at right back against Palace, against Spurs earlier this season. He hasn't been seen since. That just seems to have been as a last resort that he's able to do that, or that's when he will do that. He's brought Harrison on a couple, not Jack, the other one. You've put him on a couple of times, and you've seen bits and pieces of
Harrison
him.
Armstrong, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. He's not a manager, and I think I've been so critical of this. He's not a manager that goes and looks at alternatives that he's got at a football club. He's got his own basket of players that he turns to all the time. You think about Keane, you think about Tarkowski. you know, you think about those who he's tried and trusted for most of his career. And look, by and large, that's fair enough. If you've got who you'd want to start above other players, it becomes a massive issue when Everton don't win games, and that's very much where we are right now. Everton's academy there with Leighton Baines. I couldn't think of more of a gap with anything going on at Everton than Sean Dyche away from the academy and that squad and those players that he's got the Leighton Baines is with. Now, look, we don't look too closely. I know there's perfect, and we'll find out from our listeners that go and see the academy and are much more clued up about what goes on down there, and be able to say, look, he should be trying this, he should be trying that. And I really hope that's the case. But I think it'd indicate that Sean Dyche is it's not for him. Let's put it mildly. When you've got new owners that come in and insist that that's going to be something that they work towards, that goes very much against the grain that Sean Dyche is as a manager. And the way in which they've indicated these things about how the club should be ran at that level of the men's game in terms of the first team side of things, players that we look to do, recruitment and whatnot. Sean Dyche is not longer for me in any of those bullet points that you referred to there, Warren. I just don't feel as if they suit what they've said. And I do wonder, he's had a chat with them, like I was saying, I do wonder what he's thinking with all of this. Now, we've speculated all season long that obviously he runs to the end of his deal in May. I think you would go as far as saying pretty much every Evertonian would say he's not going to be the Everton manager that takes us to Bramley Moore. I'd agree with that. Regardless of how we do, he'd have to do something ridiculous for Everton to keep him on. With that in mind, we've got a load of owners in, like I indicated earlier on in this show, that seem to sack managers for when they need to sack managers. And I've made this point a couple of times this week that Everton sack managers and people overly criticise, people criticise it when Everton have sacked managers quickly. Spot on. I completely agree with that point. But there does become a time when it's not unnecessary to sack managers early on. It's not just for the sake of, Everton are changing a manager because we've lost a couple of games. Sacking a manager, regardless of how long they've been there, and take away the context of when they've been there, has to be done. And I think we're in that situation here with Sean Dyche. I think you've got to a position where you're like, we're not sacking another manager. You hear so many fans saying, I'm not sacking them. How many times do we sack a manager? It never works. True, fair point. But does it work with the guy you've got in? Is that any better? Absolutely not. If you need to make a change, you make that change regardless of how many have come before, how many have come after, how long they've been in, what the average is for how many months they've been in charge of Everton. If you need to change a manager, then absolutely change the manager. That encourages me in a strange way, a very bizarre way, given the amount of managers they've gone through over there at Roma, which has been a concern for many fans themselves. So, going round in circles here, I don't think Sean Dyche is going to be happy when he's read that. I say happy. I mean, he's probably content to see off his career at Everton, walk off in the sunset with a few million quid. That would happen if we sacked him then. But I will maintain what I said at the start of this season in my sort of predictions. I don't think Sean Dyche will be Everton manager come the end of this season. Look, I'm probably more inclined to agree with what I said than I was, given what the comments that you've made. The owners have come in and done their Warren. But if you're Sean Dyche now, are you particularly concerned with this, Pete?
I think I think either way, I don't think Dyche should be too concerned. Like you've said, I mean, regardless of what happens, he still gets his payoff, doesn't he?
Well,
You know what I mean?
I'll word it again, then I'll word it better. His job as Everton manager, regardless, take away what I've said there about what he gets if he leaves and he gets sacked and all that stuff. I mean, if you're Sean Dyche and your intention is to get Everton into a mid-table position, well, let's face it, that'll be a success the way Everton have been for the last few seasons. If he was to do that and he's trying his best to get a new contract, you're thinking that would be a lot more easier, for want of a better word, before the new owners came in.
I think he knows. I think he absolutely knows. He's under no false pretenses that come the end of the season he won't be Everton manager. Like you said, touched on before. It'd take some miracle. We'd have to win the FA Cup and finish fourth for him to get a new contract at Everton. That's just my
Imagine
belief.
he gives us off then. See you later, guys. I'm better than you.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. But again, I mean, to be honest, I don't necessarily have any animosity towards Sean Dyche. I think he's been the manager during a really turbulent time. I think there was a lot of things that were out of his control. I think there's a lot of outside interference in terms of everything that the football club has been through. So I do have a level of sympathy for him. I don't believe that he's the right man to take Everton forward, because I think that while we've needed a firefighter right now it's time. The fire's out, so we need to rebuild. And I think that we don't have to show animosity towards Sean Dyche. It's not insulting for me to say that I don't like his style of football and I don't believe his football is the way forward. That's just my opinion, and I believe that if we are going to have a proper fresh start and a proper new outlook for the football club, I don't think that's a style of football that we need going forward. I don't think that I've touched on before in terms of the academy. We talked about the academy before. I think it's so vital that we have that style of football is imprinted on the entire football club as a whole. I think that the decision on that needs to come from the director of football. I think I said last week as well, the most important decision for me isn't Sean Dyche, it's Kevin Thelwell. It's what we do with him. It's whether we keep him on and whether we bring in a fresh director of football, because the director of football is the one who's going to be making decisions which are going to shape the future of this football club for the next 5 to 10 years. Because you don't chop and change your director of football. Well, Moshiri did. But we need to get away from this idea that when we change a manager, we go from one extreme to another. Having said that, this is the one opportunity to do that. You get your director of football in place, you set a style of football which you're going to implement throughout the entire football club, and you stick with it. As I say, in terms of a fresh, having a fresh start and a clean slate, I don't want Sean Dyche to be the blueprint for us going forward. I think we need to have a more modern approach to football. I don't want us to start playing tippy-tappy 5-yard passes inside our own box, by the way. Just a happy medium would be nice. But anyway, I think that, I think in terms of Sean Dyche, I think the writing's on the wall. But as I say, I don't think we necessarily need to show any animosity towards him. I think, the guy's done a reasonable job for Everton Football Club under really difficult circumstances.
I am one of the people who throws I throw the kitchen sink at the man, because I just find it really difficult. That's just the way I am with it. And I'd probably say there'd be more agreement with that than, well, let's face it, people want him gone, regardless of how nice you are about it. People don't want him as Everton manager. You're just a particularly nice guy.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah,
I'd like to think I'm a nice. Well, I'd like to think I'm a nice guy, but not about Sean Dyche. I suppose that's just an individual take on things. But what Pete said there, wasn't really interested me, because if the club's so way inclined to see him towards the end of his time, and then they say goodbye, shake hands at the end of the season, and then go looking for somebody else, I can't help but feel they'll have come to Everton with ideas that Sean Dyche is not going to be Everton's man going forward. And I just refer back to those points that you made there that they've put in that statement. I'd be concerned if you're Sean Dyche reading that. I reiterate. Can you see them changing that short term, or certainly before we get to the summer?
I'm fascinated by what they talked about today at the meeting. I know we'll never find out, but I'd love to know what was said. Because I'm sure Dyche might just be very level-headed in the sense of, my contract's there, I've got a job to do, and until I'm told otherwise, I'm going to, honour my contract. And that's the sort of noble, not giving anything away answer that you hear at a lot of press conferences, isn't it? But I just wondered if they'd given him any incentive. I don't know if they had. I'd be surprised. I'd be very shocked if they didn't have their own ideas of what they want going forward. But again, this might not come from the owners themselves. These might come from the people who the owners have employed to oversee all this. Now, if they employ someone on the football side of things, be it a director of football or the current director of football, or someone else that oversees football operations, which is another role that I've heard that in the modern game, that person, whoever that is, might say to the owners, I feel that the best course of action would be to relieve or to not offer, Sean Dyche a contract at the end of the year, and we should go out and get A, B, or C in as the new manager. But I would be fascinated to know if there was any incentive for Sean Dyche there, and I'm sure we may see that as the season goes on. I don't know, but I think my own personal prediction is that I believe that unless something goes dramatically wrong, like we lose the next 10 games and we're in the relegation zone, I think unless something goes dramatically wrong, he will be here till the end of the season. And I think that the day after the Newcastle game, which is the last game of the season, I think 9 o'clock that morning, and I'm giving you the time here as well, Dave, 9 o'clock that morning, I think a statement will come out from Everton. We thank Sean Dyche for his hard work over the past 3 years under difficult circumstances, but we've decided to not honour his contract. Words to that effect. A statement will come out, and I think that's what's going to happen. But you never know. There might be an incentive there for them to, if you do this, or if you can do this, we could look at keeping you. But I'd be very surprised if he's in the thoughts of the people who are going to make these decisions, coming into the future. And I know we've talked about, Dave, about potentially doing a future managers show, like a one-off special maybe, and we'll get round to that. I was just having a quick look while we were there at next manager odds. There isn't a market for it yet, but the usual names that you see are up there. David Moyes, Thomas Frank, Steve Cooper's up there, believe it or not. So a lot of names there, and I hope we're a bit more diligent than that, and I hope we'll find. I mean, I'm starting to lean towards Thomas Frank as well, but it would be nice if. It would be nice if they did do a real due diligence on the manager selection process as well, if Sean Dyche wasn't to get his job. Look, his remit is keep us up. That's it. Get us to Bramley-Moore. And I know a lot of people are getting sick by that comment and by that trail of thought. Forget getting to Bramley-Moore. We need to see something happen now. After the Man United game, I was ready to see the back of Sean Dyche. I really was. And then I went to Arsenal at the weekends, and it was a weird one, Arsenal, because it was quite, certainly in the last 5-10 minutes, it was quite buoyant in the away end, because we've not seen that a lot at Arsenal. We know and it's probably the first game this season where, I don't know, we didn't play well, and I know it wasn't necessarily the greatest watch, but I think for me it was the first game this season where we haven't looked like caving in, and there looked to be a little bit of an edge there in our mentality anyway. So hopefully that's a positive sign going forward. I don't know. Hopefully we will reach some sort of form like we did the back end of last season. And who knows, maybe with this cloud that's now disappeared from over the club's head, and there's a bit of stability there, and at least from you wonder if it feeds down to the players, this sort of thing. I'm sure there'll be a lot of players in the changing room now and in Finch Farm who maybe be worrying about their futures, or have their futures improved because of the takeover. Will they be here next year or not themselves? So that's going to play a part. But I don't know, I would suggest that maybe not having, because the players must have had an inkling about what's been going on the last few years. Of course, they have. James Coleman was quite revealing in an interview he had I think today or yesterday, when he was saying about what he hopes these new owners bring, and how it's sort of been from a player's point of view. So I think they've definitely had thoughts in the back of their head about what's been going on, and you'd hope that maybe there's a bit of freedom in for them now as well. And maybe that, look, if there's going to be new players coming in January, because we can sign these players now, maybe they've got to start performing, otherwise they're out the first 11. So there's not that comfort there. Maybe there's not. Go on, mate.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, maybe the comfort's not there for them players now. We thought, I'm guaranteed in the starting 11 every week, because we haven't got any money to bring anyone in, and who else is there? Whereas now, maybe it's like, well, hang on a minute, I need to start performing, because if someone else comes in, I might not be here. So it might breed a bit of competition, a bit of healthy competition.
I was going to say, then you could probably have an hour-long conversation on when's the last time you've seen Everton players fighting for the position. It certainly won't be with Sean Dyche, will it? Certainly with these kids.
No, but you say that, Dave. We've had a few, not loads. We've had a few players come back recently, and we've been able to make substitutions. And I know we were comfortable in the Wolves game, so we could bring the young lad Harrison Armstrong on, and a couple of other players on. But there seems to be a little bit more competition now, particularly in the striker departments as well. So who knows? I think anything like that's healthy. You can't just grind with the same, 12, 13 players. You need to have 14, 15, don't you? Then maybe that's what January will bring. We'll see.
Do you know what though as well? That's why
Yeah.
that's why recruitment is so important, because one of the biggest issues during the Farhad Moshiri years was that to attract players to the football club, we overpaid them basically. So we basically given them a contract which was the absolute peak that they would ever get. So in terms of their actual motivation, their motivation was kind of ended at the point of getting that massive contract. There was no motivation to fight for your place or whatever, because they were kind of set. Do you know what I mean? I think that's why recruitment's so important. Why David Moyes was so great at bringing players from outside of the Premier League and bringing them to the Premier League to prove themselves and to have them striving to improve and to prove themselves consistently and constantly. And the way you improve is by fighting for your place and fighting for everything on the pitch. So I think in terms of the recruitment, it's that mentality we want to get back in the football club. I don't want players who are over the hill who just want one last payday. I don't want players who are going to come here with an ego, thinking they've come from, Man United and think that they're bigger than Everton Football Club. With the amount of times we sign a player from Manchester United, one of their reserve team players, who ends up being one of our top earners, I think those days need to be gone. I think we need to carefully look at how we recruit, look at the attitudes of the players, look at the personality of the players, look where they are in their careers. And we need to find hungry players who want to come in here and fight for their place. So yeah, that for me should be the blueprint going forward.
It'll be really interesting to see what goes on as we go into the new year. See if we can go and do anything in January, and see what these new owners are all about. Because I'm sure there'll be someone interviewing someone somewhere. Apparently, they're going to be at Goodison on Sunday for this game against Chelsea as well, which I'm sure they'll be greeted with a fine welcome, like Farhad Moshiri was that day when he came in, and everybody was screaming about him being our new owner with his billionaire check and stuff like that. Hopefully, that doesn't repeat in the coming future with Everton. But quickly before we finish, lads, we've got Chelsea at home. What have emerged as the title contenders to Liverpool, which is one of those strange games, isn't it? That when you lose those against it, it's really sad, isn't it? We used to do it with Manchester City at home, and in years gone by, you're not asked if Manchester City win because it means they'll finish above Liverpool. Certainly not in that position right now, and you want to go and get 3 points as quick as you possibly can when we can in this dreadful run of games towards New Year. Warren, I'll come to you first. What are you saying in this game? Everton going to get some points on the board, 3 points, maybe a draw with our new owners sitting in the stand?
That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? It sounds horrible, doesn't it, saying you'd take a draw, but I think in context of everything at the minute, it's a bit like Arsenal last week. It was. I heard you lads, you and Les on post-match, and whilst you were encouraged by the result, you were saying, and I agree with you, you were saying, we can't keep playing like this. It's just not a good watch.
Yeah.
But again, under the context of everything, I think Chelsea look frightened at the minute. They seem to have just clicked into another gear, and the manager, I think, has done brilliant. I think with all the noise and the upheaval, certainly last season, were around them, and the fact that they were just splashing the cash and they weren't, they were just buying players for the sake of buying players, it seemed. And I think he's done an incredible job to get a balance with that squad now. And I think what he's been really clever with, he said, right, the Conference League, the European games are for these players, and everything else is for these players. He's made it very clear, and he said from the out, this is what we're going to do. And he's changed it when he's felt he's had to, and it's worked for him. Sometimes that backfires when you rotate, but when you rotate a lot of players. But he made, I think, 6 changes for Southampton, and they went and won 5-1. Away from home, and then he's made, or was it 5-0, whatever it was. But I know that they won by a lot, didn't they? And then I was watching the Spurs game away from home the other week when they went 2-0 down, and even at 2-0 up, Spurs, you just thought, Chelsea are winning this. Chelsea win this. They're too good. They're too good. And they've got over that hurdle at the start of the season where, not necessarily a hurdle, but they were dropping points in the odd game and they didn't quite find that balance. But they look really frightening now, spearheaded by obviously Cole Palmer. But I think they've got the midfield set. I think the lad they signed from Brighton, forget his name, the one they spent 100 million on, who Liverpool wanted. Yeah, he's starting to look the real deal now as well, and they certainly look like they could come to Goodison, and a bit like the Chelsea of old, under Mourinho, where they just had that power and that pace and that strength and that quality. They're looking like they could produce something along those lines. But listen, we've had a fantastic record against Chelsea. I saw a tweet that a Chelsea fan put the other day, and it was just highlights of all our results against them the last 10 years. And the title of the tweet was just cursed, because we've had so many good results against them recently. So we should take that into the game. And, you know, with the news of the new ownership, I think the crowd will be up for it. The last game before Christmas, everyone's off work, so it'll I think it'll be a morale boosting crowd anyway, and you know, hopefully we can see them over the line and get the 3 points or even a point that we need, which would be massive in this month where we've got so many tough fixtures.
Score you going for?
Me head tells me my head tells me a Chelsea win, unfortunately, but you never know. I mean, I think we've improved the last couple of games. You know, the Wolves game and obviously the Arsenal away. We've seemed to have got a bit of a balance ourselves again now. Look, I won't sit on the fence. I'm going to say an optimistic 1-1.
Fair enough. I think most people bite your hands off for that. What are you saying,
Yeah.
Pete?
Well, I said before these 3 games against Arsenal, Chelsea, and City, I predicted 1 point out of those 3 games.
Already got it, mate. So we're above average straight away for you, aren't we?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, let's throw caution to the wind. I'm going to say we're going to win 1-0 with like a horrible 91st minute header from a corner. I just think that.
Do you know what? Can I just say, sorry, dead quick? Whenever us 3 have been on before a game, we've always predicted the worst, and and I'll put the kiss of death on it now, of course, but we've always done all right whenever us 3 are on. We've always seemed to have got a result.
Oh, you've just I
know.
4-0 Chelsea.
Hey, listen, this is the new era of Everton. We're not doing the old school mentality anymore. When us 3 are on, we do well. So we're going to do the business on Sunday.
I like it. We're going to win 1-0, but horrible, yeah, from a corner. Tarkovsky 1-0, 93rd minute.
Hey, it's meant to be windy as well, isn't it? It's meant to be windy again this weekend.
There's been calls, hasn't it? There's been calls that this
1-0. There you go.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we might see Dyche ball at its full effect on Sunday.
Yeah.
So you never know.
I don't think Chelsea like that. One thing I'll say before we finish is Cole Palmer, you mentioned there. I'm a massive fan of his. I think he's one of the best young talents I've seen for a long, long time, probably since Rooney. I think he's absolutely brilliant. Just a shame he's at Chelsea. He'd never be with us anyway, would he? But absolute madness that Manchester City sold him for 40 million quid 2 years ago. Anyway, I'm going for Chelsea to do us 3-1, sadly. And we'll go on to Boxing Day. When we step over to Manchester City, that one's where we're all positive about, isn't it? Thanks, lads, as always. And what have we got? We haven't got a game before Christmas other than Sunday, have we? But there is and I'm sure you lads will be asked and invited anyway, there's going to be a Royal Rumble pre-Christmas mailbag that Les is organising. So I'm sure you two lads will be involved, which is going to have plenty of us involved anyway. So hopefully give you a bit of frivolity before the big day on the 25th, and of course Boxing Day as well. The usual shows return, just at different dates and times and whatnot. We'll keep all that posted this week. Bagfuls and new ownership stuff as well, which is still to come out. And thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for listening to us all as always. And up the toffees.